Matthew. Well, no, I didn't disagree with anything you said. But I did want to point out the word atom, undivided in Greek, individual, again, undivided, right? Except the individual is indivisible in fact, and the atom is divisible. It's the undivided divisible, right? So there's a difference of emphasis when you use the word atom. And I feel like Ford completely misuses that word. Doesn't even seem to see that it means undivided as of yet. But individual really does mean indivisible, except in analysis, right? So the atoms do the dividing, the individuals do not. The individuals exist in continuity with their, not only their past, but also their contribution to the future. And one other thing, Royce said, the present self interprets the past self.
To the future self.
Yeah, you caught yourself.
Okay, we do have a large online audience. I'm going to give them a shout out with the question. And Joe, I believe this is directed toward you. The question comes from Ben Snyder. The question is, how much logical formalism do we have in the student lecture notes? And are there any indications as to whether they're reproduced from Whitehead or original to the students themselves?
I'm not sure I understand the question. How much logical formalism?
Yeah.
Yes, question of logical formalism with respect to the notes.
I have no idea.
They got formulas. Yeah, that's formulas.
Sure.
Oh, I see. Yeah, he did write some on the blackboard. And so that did show up. Sometimes they weren't, we know, transcribed correctly because the students didn't understand them. But there is a little bit here and there. He seemed to start in the first year with more of that. And then as time went on, there seemed to be, he sensed that there was trouble with the students understanding those. And so he did less of it. But yeah.
Thank you. Yes.
Mathematical physics or logic?
Thank you.
Both.
Yes, for Dr. Guo, I want to make a few comments. First of all, I could say I was the personal assistant to Whitehead's personal assistant at Harvard here.
Okay.
And he was the personal assistant while Whitehead wrote Process and Reality and all his other works. In a general way, one of the deepest lessons was Whitehead's openness, and he realized that for process philosophy to be true to itself, it must be in continuous processes of creative development, creative modification, and that's something most Whiteheadians, many Whiteheadians from religious traditions and theological traditions don't realize. Whitehead was extraordinarily open, and he was dissent, debate, democratic decision-making was at the heart of his soul. So to be true to itself, it was a philosophy that was in process of development. For Professor Guo's lecture and your PowerPoint, I think it's very fascinating.
Thank you.
And I look forward to learning more about it. But I want to make two comments on that. And that is, it's not, in my judgment, it's not Chinese philosophy as a whole that has a kinship with Whitehead's philosophy. It's Taoism.
Oh, it's Taoism.
Taoism has the kinship.
Okay.
And Confucianism has a lot of contradictions with Whitehead's thinking, especially in the harmony of hierarchies that Confucianism preaches in its practice. Taoism is much more open, as Whitehead's philosophy is more open. In Process and Reality, where he talks about the kinship of Eastern modes of thought and his own mode and Process and Reality, it's not just Chinese, it's Indian thought.
Indians as well. Yeah.
And if we don't understand Hinduism, which has a cosmology of the infinite and the integrated, our understanding of that kinship is narrow. We have to incorporate that. And I'd like to say for Dr. Lucas, with whom I've talked about a letter that was discovered, Whitehead's assistant, his name was Henry Leonard, and he was his colleague for 10 years at Harvard. He knew Whitehead's thinking maybe better than anyone who lived because he was both a mathematician and a modal logician, and he worked with Kurt Gödel after Whitehead. That's a rather unusual combination, to work with two historic geniuses, but he also understood Whitehead's metaphysics. But I was searching for some unpublished language synthesizing modal logic, which the center was at Emerson, as well with propositional logic. That's what he was doing at the Princeton Institute. And I knew that Lowell was searching for a letter that was reported sent from Whitehead to Leonard after he contributed a chapter. It's a very profound letter. And Dr. Eastman and myself and my wife, we helped, and George, you were there. There was a symposium in the Library of Congress in which that letter was presented. And as George Whitehead mentioned to me, and I knew, but we all know, but it was nice to hear from the horse's mouth here, that his grandfather did not want his letters published, and many were destroyed. But this letter we found, and the beauty of this letter is what Whitehead revealed, his attitude towards the emergence of analytical philosophy and logical empiricism. Okay.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Yes, Indians, Taoism, Confucianism. Yeah, we all need to look at.
Question from Dr. Keller.
Yeah, this has been incredibly rich Whitehead nutrition, and I'm very grateful for everything I've learned today. I was intrigued by the notion of the code cracking. Of course, it's exciting to draw Whitehead through Bell into this relationship to cracking the Nazi code. So thank you for that. But particularly, I just wanted to make a quick comment on the code cracking in relation to the Yin-yang tradition. And I just want to say something that I hope is liberating. There's been a big obstruction to discussing the connection of Whitehead's understanding of contrast to yin-yang for about 40 years, because we feminists have been so worried about the way in which the yin-yang is associated with masculine feminine in a way that makes men active and women passive, men singular and one, and women multiple. And you know all that. And it's not that the problem will just go away, but as someone who was part of naming that problem, I just want to say I'm over it. We really need the rich, and we've had a couple of generations of women coming to our own voice, one and many, receptive and active, and so I just want to affirm that this yin-yang connection to the Whiteheadian sense of contrast is really crucial for tugging relations between Chinese thought and Asian thought in a bigger way, and Western, particularly, process directions together, because it's such a non-binary way of working with difficult difference, and we just really need it. And so I'm just declaring a kind of feminist liberation from the old liberation habit of rejecting the yin-yang.
Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. Time for about 2 more questions. the development of Whitehead's thought. Yes, George.
Just another question for Professor Guo, and maybe in a more practical way. Can we look forward to more symbols than what you've shown going forward? Because I asked a friend in Mandarin to create an image that it shows an abrupt surge of inspired knowledge based on learning process, including artificial intelligence. And can we look forward to more expressive things coming from Mandarin side? And something that we can all start to discuss in a practical way going future.
Thank you for your question. I haven't really thought about this, but each Chinese character actually is a picture, image. So if you try to translate some core concept of Whitehead into Chinese character, then you look at the Chinese character, somehow you can recognize the meaning. Actually, Whitehead tried to express. Maybe along that direction, we can see if we can identify some more useful symbols or structures to describe Whitehead's thoughts. Yeah, thank you.
Sometime I really hope to hear from Professor Fubin Yang on how in the world do you translate process and reality into Mandarin? I mean, how do you make decisions on those? Yeah, what characters do you use to describe actual occasion and prehension and concrete? I mean, so some other time you tell us how you did that magical work. Yeah, because that's a good question.
Okay, let's give our panel a hand. Thank you guys very much.